Today's video is going to be about two really important aspects of recovery. And those two things are positive thinking and staying busy. Now, if your anxiety is not treated well right now, is not under control, or your depression is not being treated well, has not been addressed sufficiently, then positive thinking is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible. So the first thing that, if you're in that situation, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to see a mental health professional, which I've told you in all my videos, I am not. See a mental health professional and get on a treatment plan. The treatment may involve cognitive therapy. It may involve pharmaceutical intervention. It may involve just changing a lot of the routines. Maybe you've gotten into some really bad routines that exacerbate your symptoms of anxiety or depression. But that's what you're going to have to do if you're in that situation. So if you are in that situation, you know that I understand that this video you might not quite be ready to really adjust your thinking towards being positive or being more hopeful. But eventually you are going to have to change some of the thought patterns that you learn when you're clinically depressed or when you're severely anxious with either intrusive thought OCD, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, any of those. We learn some really bad habits mentally, catastrophic thinking, what if thinking, but on steroids. That's what happens when we're deeply anxious or even if we're deeply depressed, the same thing. Now, once we're in a better place, that's when this positive thinking is going to really, really be essential in getting better. Now, what do I mean by positive thinking? I don't mean magical thinking in reverse. So I'm not talking about imagining that every outcome is going to be great. It's all going to be rainbows and butterflies, and because what's that going to lead to? That's going to lead to disappointment. That's not the way life currently is. We're always going to have challenges. Sometimes we're going to try to accomplish something and we're going to fail at it. And that doesn't mean that the world is ending or that, we should fall back into our old patterns of thinking where, we feel like things are impossible because of our racing thoughts or our, we have an altered sense of reality from clinical depression. So we need to realize that we need to allow for the idea that there can be good outcomes. Because I can just speak from personal experience. When you're in that dark place, when you're really under, severe anxiety and depression, you feel as though nothing good can happen. You feel as though, in fact, if you allow yourself to think something good might happen, that you're going to make something bad happen. That is how illogical and unreasonable we start our thought pattern is when we're deeply anxious or deeply clinically depressed. So, we have to allow for the idea, okay, so you do what if thinking, right? Well, what if, especially, and this is especially important on things that we have a measure of control over, once we start feeling better and we actually can focus our thoughts, well, then what about a what if scenario where the outcome is good? Especially if we're able to control the outcome somewhat, whether it be our relationships. Maybe because of our anxiety or depression, we haven't been able to invest in the people that we love. Well, improving those relationships, allowing us allowing ourselves to think we can improve those relationships is not magical thinking or irrational. If we're able to attend to our relationships, then that is, having a hopeful outlook about that is a really good thing. And we should allow ourselves to have the idea of hope and enjoyment. One of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies, hope is a good thing, perhaps the best of things, right? And we need hope. We need it. So that's why positive thinking is going to help. Imagine good scenarios, especially in things we're investing in, like maybe we had let ourselves go physically when we were deeply clinically depressed or anxious. Now we're working on it. Maybe we're going to the gym, or we're dieting. One of the big things that'll help is positive thinking when it comes to those things, because you put in the work, whether it's exercise or the diet, and you also have to envision the finished product, right? That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us putting one foot in front of the other. So, positive thinking is essential in getting back up off the mat and getting ourselves back to a place where we're actually enjoying life and accomplishing things. And that's what we want, right? We have these creative, intelligent minds that have been just completely focused on, what they can't control, things that they can't control. And now if we're under treatment and we're getting better, we should have a lot of mental energy, emotional energy that we can invest in our relationships, our jobs, our health, and others in general. That's going to lead right into the next thing that we're going to talk about, and that is staying busy. Again, as I just alluded to, your mind has been busy just focusing on things it can't control. So now you're starting to feel better. So you're starting to be able to do things again. Now you're going to be hesitant at first, because every time you tried to do something before, it may have triggered a panic attack. It may have triggered, a feeling that you're not comfortable with, a feeling of unreality, something like that. But now, whether it's through medication or therapy, you're not at that point anymore. So here's where you have to stay busy. And, having all this mental and emotional energy is really going to help you. And what I find, especially since anxiety and depression, even though we are not selfish, tend to be selfish conditions, what I have found is what's really good is to stay busy helping others. If we stay busy, investing in our relationships, helping other people, those are things that are going to be really productive, because they're going to have really good consequences. They're going to improve our lives indirectly, because they're going to improve our relationships. And it's also not going to be something where all of a sudden we start focusing just on ourselves. And also, another thing we can stay busy with, something we're passionate about. Maybe there's a hobby that while you were clinically depressed, while you were experiencing anxiety disorder, you weren't able to pursue it or to engage in it because you didn't have the focus. Well, if you're passionate about something, whatever that hobby is, it can be gardening, it can be hiking, it can be whatever. Whatever that is, get back into it. Let your mind have an occupation that is useful. And why I say to do something that you're passionate about is because that passion will help keep you focused. And that's something you haven't been good at if you're just coming through clinical depression or clinical anxiety. Focus was not your forte, at least other than focusing on something horrible, negative that you couldn't control. My experience has been that focusing, even sometimes reading a couple of sentences, was more than I could do when I was at my worst. So we want to definitely stay busy doing things that are positive, that are outside of us, a hobby that we're passionate about, as I mentioned. Also, any of the relationships that have suffered from when you were, not well, whether it be a friend that, you stopped seeing because of your anxiety or your depression, or a relationship with a family member. This would be a really nice thing to invest and stay busy doing. Use your time to build those relationships back. If you have to mend fences, mend fences. Use that mental and emotional energy that you now are starting to get back to do that. And, again, why the focus on staying busy? Because even if you're under treatment and you're starting to do better, idle time for people with our health condition, our mental health condition, is not good. The saying, idle hands are the devil's work. Well, that is so true when it comes to people with anxiety and clinical depression. You need to keep these active, analytical minds busy doing something positive, or we can slip back into some of the bad habits that we learned when we were, experiencing severe anxiety and depression. Another thing that you can focus on, maybe you let your physical health go while you were clinically depressed. And again, you don't want to be too consumed with yourself, but focusing on getting your health back, whether it be through diet and exercise, it's always a good thing to do, especially if that had fallen to the wayside when we were really at our worst. So those are some things we can stay busy with. Another point I wanted to make before I close the video is there's a lot of information that you'll read on the internet or from various sources that talk about the role of thinking as it pertains, and the way you think as it pertains to anxiety, especially anxiety. Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Where did you think your way? Was it your bad way of dealing with stress and your bad way of thinking that led you to experiencing this clinically diagnosed anxiety disorder? And the science, from my understanding, and from the very first psychiatrist I saw, was that is absolutely not the case. And my own experience, I would say that's absolutely true as well. I did not think my way into panic attacks. I did not, think my way into the physiological symptoms that I started feeling out of the blue that were so physiological that it took me a while to even acknowledge that they could be caused from stress or anxiety. So actually, what the psychiatrist told me is that, working with your thinking pattern, alone as the only form of treatment was 33% effective, which is exactly the same as not getting treated at all. Without any treatment at all, 33% of people will recover from these anxiety spectrum conditions and depression. So the thinking pattern alone is not what got you here. You didn't worry your way into panic disorder. You didn't worry your way into obsessive compulsive disorder. You didn't worry your way into any of these conditions. Now, You do, and why I made the video is after you've had these conditions, you do develop bad thinking patterns. So it's not that there's no truth to the things that are encouraged by people who say that, you've got bad thought patterns, and they allege that that caused the issue. You do have to unlearn them after you do have them, once you have those, once you're either clinically depressed or you have one of the other anxiety spectrum disorders. But the contention that that's what precipitated them has pretty much been disproved through science. And what I can say anecdotally, again, is that that was not the case with me. With me, I did not, it wasn't that I had some habits in my life that I could have done better. I was a worrier, but I had handled stress fine for 31 years. And I just noticed a combination of things that I alluded to in some of my other videos. I was getting no sleep. Stress was very high at the time. And, I also were going through some large changes in my life. So those things I think can play a hand, again, along with heredity and some other factors, as far as why you may end up with one of these, really difficult to deal with conditions. But I still, even though that's not maybe the cause, right? That's not the cause of these conditions. Unlearning those bad thinking patterns is essential once you start to get better. It's essential in staying better. And so that's why positive thinking and staying busy, I wanted to make this video. I feel like, as you're getting better, as you've received treatment, whatever type of treatment that is, remembering these two things is really going to help you. It's helped me. And so that's about all I wanted to say in this video. Again, thank you guys so much for all of the likes, all of the comments, like, share, subscribe. Let someone know if you know somebody who's having a hard time with one of these conditions. Let them know about the channel. If nothing else, it'll probably at least give them some insight and especially a feeling out there that they're not alone. So again, until my next video, take care.